Hi, everyone. Welcome to our special summer power hour. We wanted to have this special session to talk about bringing entrepreneurship into your school. Hopefully, get your gears turning, some seeds planted for this coming school year, and how you might be able to incorporate some of these ideas into your programs. I'm Elizabeth Clymer. I'm the Senior Manager of Education at the Young Entrepreneur Institute. Uh, Hi to everyone that's here. I know we have a lot of people registered, and they will watch the recording if they can't hop on right now. I know it's hard in the summer. So we are recording this. Just heads up to everyone. And you will be able to get the recording and watch it later too, just like they will, in case you want to go back and see what we covered today. So as you joined, we were playing Try Everything by Shakira. It felt like a great lead-in to our agenda today, getting ready to try new things, persevere. If we fall down, we get up. The entrepreneurial spirit for both our kids, but also for us as we try new things and bring new things to them. This first slide had a question about where you're joining from and what age you work with, what environment you're working in. We would love to know any information that you have to share. If you want to put that in the chat, just let us know kind of where you're coming from. So you can feel free to keep dropping that in the chat. Or if you have questions or comments, I will be checking that as we go, kind of asking any questions or comments. Feel free to use the chat during this whole session. Today, you are going to hear from Jamey Polak and Karen Sunderhalf from their experiences as educators and entrepreneurs, as well as some information from me as representative of YEI and some of the resources that we provide to bring entrepreneurship into your school. So, Marissa, if you want to change the slide, we can get little headshots. Um, so Karen has been a teacher at the Aurora City School District for the last 8 years here in Northeast Ohio as the sixth and seventh grade gifted English teacher and the sixth grade STEAM teacher. She has been in education for more than 30 years, working in various educational settings from private single-sex education to online teaching and currently in public schools, working with a range of students from preschool through high school. In 2024, she received the Inspire Founders Award in recognition of excellence in youth entrepreneurship education. Jamey is currently the LaunchNet program manager at John Carroll University and owner of Smash Factor Fitness. He has taught in the classroom and runs incubators for high school and college. And he will share his experience working with students of all ages, as well as discuss the perspective from an entrepreneurial educator. And like I said, we're recording the session. The recording slides and any links will be sent to you after this program. And like I said, feel free to use the chat for any communication. And without further ado, Karen, I'm going to kick it off to you.
All right. Hi, everybody. Happy summer. Thank you so much for coming and viewing this today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop with you guys. Hopefully, oh, great. It closed. So hold on a second. Let me just grab that again. Here it is. So let me make sure. There we go. And put it on slideshow. So is that okay? Working okay? Can you guys see that okay?
You're good. Good to go.
Okay. So my goal for today is really from the teacher perspective of trying to really connect entrepreneurship to the Ohio state standards, which is what we're all held accountable for. And it just really basically, when I was thinking about it, entrepreneurship is really just the subject matter, whatever you teach, whether you teach business, English, science, social studies, art, math, whatever it may be. I want you to look at that as your vehicle, right? That's obviously the car that you drive. It's the subject matter that you are focused on. And then those state standards are pretty general, but they're the guiding factors. They're the wheels that drive that car forward. And then whatever vehicle that you pick, It could be a Porsche, could be a station wagon, could be a minivan, whatever vehicle you pick. That's basically the subject that you specific subject matter that you want to address through your lens and focus for whatever subject you teach. But you want to use entrepreneurship as that vehicle that drives the lesson forward, because I find with my own students, they get really motivated when it's a real world experience, something that they can attach to, like the YEI pitch challenge, have it be something real and to make a difference. So the state standards really apply to all subjects, right? In business and math, obviously that's easy, right? You're making money, there's fiscal literacy, the profits and loss, lots of things that you can focus on there. Science, I feel like there's a lot you can do with science if you're focused on climate change, water, sanitation crisis, pollution, etc. In our class, for example, I teach 6th and 7th grade gifted English in Aurora, and the students do a lot of research on the water crisis globally and the sanitation crisis that goes on in many different countries. And then I use argument writing as a vehicle for them to come up with ways, and they do some research to solve I want them to pick the two best ways to solve the water crisis. And there could be lots of things that they research. They might come up with some of their own ideas, and then they have to argue in their writing which two are the best ways to solve that problem. So that's something that I then can piggyback on later on for coming up with a product or service. So English, of course, as an English teacher, teaching the students to be concise in their writing. I know a lot of students tend to be pretty wordy, and being able to be concise and to focus their writing, having a good hook is always a generally good practice when writing or speaking and presenting. And then at the end, having a strong conclusion with a slogan or a tagline. Theater, obviously, there's the being able to make a persuasive pitch and projecting your voice and then communicating. Art can be focused on the marketing and advertising sometimes when it comes to an entrepreneurship idea. And I love the idea because I do a lot of volunteering with my students, having them be socially conscious. What can they do to give back to their community? So some of the English skills that are gained and mastered are listed here. Some of the general standards in Ohio, just being able to adapt speech to a variety of contents and tasks, writing and speaking, just in general, can be applied to students making an elevator pitch like they do for YEI. They have to, those soft skills there are clarifying ideas and information in a concise way, as I said. Their public speaking skills, we do a lot of practicing, projecting their voice, understanding their audience, using their hands and their voice and their face to convey an idea. And then really just in general, persuading others to believe what they believe, to believe what they feel passionate about. And I think one of the other standards that applies to all subjects, all grade levels, is there's always a research piece. And any successful business, you're going to, at the heart of it, you're going to have to do your research. You're going to have to do your homework. You're going to have to figure out and be aware of a problem that needs to be solved. And then other people have that same problem. Do your research. What's on the marketplace? What needs to be done? What are your consumers looking for? So all of that research, students really have to put that time in and front load their efforts to really have a successful business or to solve a problem effectively. So research is something I think that generally really applies to all standards. And then once you do your research and coming up with an idea, presenting that information to others, again, having them equal your passion on the topic and make them be consumers who want to buy your product or service. So these are some standards that I feel really can help with that. Students are really, this is a great technical skills, learning to communicate through social media or even just print or visual. Those are all different areas that can be tapped into for their entrepreneurship and other areas. So clearly writing, again, we kind of talked about that. Like I said, a lot of students, the standards ask for them to explore informational writing and argument writing. And I think there's a lot of people who can agree that when you're trying to pitch your business idea, you can hold the case that that's argument writing. You want people to understand with evidence why this is a problem that needs to be solved and that your product or service really can meet that need. So, and then I think this is more of the same. Like I said, is having students communicate. You can be creative. There's lots of different creative avenues that they can use. Um, there's lots of different, a lot of my students, when they make presentations, can go with the simple Google Slides, but they've also done other things through Canva or Prezi. So that's another additional skill that they're learning as they're talking about their entrepreneurship. Some of their most important life skills that I believe entrepreneurship provides to students is their creative problem solving, always thinking outside the box, looking for a different solution. There's a lot of conversation when my students are coming up with ideas for the YEI pitch challenge where they're like, well, this kind of already exists, but they can make it better by adding something or doing something different. And I love the idea of them building upon somebody else's creative ideas. We talk a lot about active listening, awareness, and research, as I talked about with research, but really being able to recognize a problem and see if they can figure out what needs to be done to make it better. I love the idea of being adaptable. Students really have to learn how to pivot. If there's other ideas out there who could be competing with their business product idea service, even within our own class, there are students who came up with the same ideas, and we had to figure out which way to go. Was somebody doing something a little bit different, or they're going to go into a total different area so that you don't have to deal with that competition? So we talked about that. Always entrepreneurs need to understand resilience and grit, because any of the speakers that I've been able to have come to my class who are entrepreneurs, they talk about the journey, and it's never easy. There's always a setback, there's always a challenge. You just have to continue to persevere if you believe in what you're doing. And we put down influential communication, because especially in today's day and age, there's lots of different ways to convey your message to others. They can be creative about that. But at the end of the day, you really need to have a strong written and verbal skills, and just, a good emotional intelligence to kind of read the room of the people that you're selling to. And then making sure that you clarify your ideas so people understand what you're trying to sell, can come on board, support you, and buy your product or service. So I know Jamey's going to talk a little bit more about this, but I did just want to mention that the U.S. Department of Labor reports on essential soft skills for our future workers, and that can include just their professionalism, their work ethic, seeing a product from the beginning to the end, oral and written communication, teamwork and collaboration skills, and critical thinking or problem-solving skills. Really no surprise. And so I just wanted to zoom ahead here and just give you a real small snippet of an example of how we worked with our Ohio State standards and really help the students to make a pitch of something they were looking for. Now, it's not really a business product, but it was something they were super passionate about. Basically, way back, if you guys remember, April 8th, when we had the total solar eclipse, at first, our school district was not going to have the day off from school so that students could enjoy that at home with their families. And they were passionate about getting a day off from school. So they had a problem that they wanted to solve, and there was a lot of research that went into it in the beginning. What's the best way to get what they were after, which was a day off from school? So they came with the idea that they were going to present to the Board of Education, but they had to make a speech. So they had to do their research, and they had to figure out how to write concisely, because they had a time limit for presenting in front of the board. So we worked on their concise writing. We knew that we wanted them to be a little bit creative. We wanted to make sure that they could clarify their ideas and that they could connect with the audience. So we talked a lot about their hook, how to get the audience to really understand what they were pitching to them, what they were hoping for. And these were, just so you know, fifth graders. So I don't teach them, but I was working with the other teacher to help her with this process. So we kind of all worked together. So the students learned to be able to state their problem, They used a lot of facts and statistics. One of the important ones was around the time in Ohio when we were gonna have that happen was right around 3 o'clock, which would be when a lot of students were leaving the school district. And they talked a lot about past research where students were, people got into car accidents or they were pulling over to the side of the road. Their biggest argument was we should really be home already, not really on the streets trying to get home so we could fully enjoy the solar eclipse. So they amplified the issue. They made everybody care about it as much as they did, um, just as a whole family, not just adults versus kids. And they offered some solutions, which I thought were really good. Some ways that they could say yes to them, and helping them to visualize it. Some of their solutions were they said, you could call off the whole school day. We could go to school half a day. Um, and we could use this as a school day where we're educating students at home. They may have some kind of activity to do associated with the scientific part of it and the whole solar eclipse, so that they would say, staying home was educational that day. The most important thing was their slogan or tagline, which was their closing, which was really awesome. And they said, at the end, thank you for helping us shoot for the stars, because they really focused on the science aspect of it. So that was just, we use that as an example for getting off the school day. And then these are students who I then get in sixth grade and seventh grade, and I can piggyback on that idea and help them to then use a pitch challenge for the pitch challenge, coming up with a business product or solution, and just piggybacking on that so that we could make a difference. So that hopefully will give you some examples that could be helpful. Let me see if I can X out. Okay.
Thank you. That was amazing. Very comprehensive. I made a lot of notes for when I'm going to talk about some of the YEI things and make connections to a lot of what you did. So that was terrific. Thank you so much, Karen. I know a lot of what you said leads very well into what Jamey is going to talk about. So I'm going to turn it right over to him.
All right. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Let me skip my. All right. Is it showing okay? Okay. So before I jump in, I do want to say that the focus of my talk today is going to be on gaining support from administrator for your programs. I will touch a little bit on um, and I think it's important to touch upon building different components, the kind of the philosophy behind how we deliver entrepreneurship programming, because I think it's important to align that with the way we're talking to administrators. But that being said, I apologize now in that I get somewhat opinionated on the philosophy of some of this stuff. So just realize it's like I'll try not to soapbox it, but sometimes my philosophy isn't going to naturally be a right fit for you. So I'm going to try to temper that as much as I can. And if I sound very adamant about something, just realize that make sure that your approach fits your environment as well. So good disclaimer, Elizabeth. All right. So I think when approaching administration, I've built programs in a couple of different high schools, and then coming to John Carroll, I came into a great existing ecosystem, and a program that was already in a good place and just looking to expand it and constantly improve it. But I think what we really have to do is we have to start changing the way we frame how we talk about the value of entrepreneurship, right? And I think, and I've gotten in trouble with this already in places, is um, we want to emphasize that it's not just all about creating ventures, right? As the basis of Karen's talk told us. But I think we also have to make sure that we don't downplay the impact and the success stories that we can build. This isn't an either or scenario. If we do our programming right, we can have students start these great businesses, and we can have students who take the value of our programming into all those different areas, right? So don't think of it as an either or. Think of it as two great options. So I think as we approach administrators, and this could be curriculum directors, building principals, sometimes superintendents, committees, whatever the case might be, is um, like any sales situation is understanding what their needs are and what their goals are and what their hot buttons are going to be. Is you can be very passionate about entrepreneurship, as I am, and I'm guessing a handful of you are, but understand that the administrators don't have that same passion, right? They're not going to see that vision. So what we want to start framing as we want to look at what matters to them. And I think that the thing that matters most to them is, and if you guys have been doing this a while, you've probably all had multiple building principals, curriculum people come in, and everybody makes their mark with whether portraits of a graduate, graduate outcomes. Districts are always going to, every 5, 10, 15 years, they're going to reevaluate those things. So we want to tie our entrepreneurship programs into helping our administrators achieve those outcomes that they put forth, right? So it's not about our goals, it's about their goals. And again, it's not an either or. They're complementary and they fit well together. So we're gonna again start it as put a focus on student development, not startup creation. Okay. So, and I ran into this, it's been a while now, maybe 10 years ago, when I started teaching entrepreneurship. And I think a lot of people I've talked to have had the same thing is that there's a huge misunderstanding of what we're trying to do with entrepreneurship. We can't look at it as that startup factory, as an incubator. That doesn't mean we can't have incubators. I've done high school and college incubators, and they're great, but that's one possible outcome. And I think as much as we can is we want them to overlap, but we want them to be somewhat separate. Because the reality is that not all students are going to want to start businesses, right? And reality, very few actually are. But we're not going for the small percentage that want to start businesses. We're going for all the students and the benefits that we can provide. And Karen did a great job talking about this, right? The benefits of students understanding problems, working with people, testing ideas, creative thinking, collaboration. All those skills are going to be built into everything we do in entrepreneurship programming. And I think what we need to put a focus on, and I try to do, is really have a huge emphasis. And if I'm selling students, I spend a lot of the time, a lot of time in my summer working with incoming freshmen, pitching them and their parents on the entrepreneurship minor at our school. Is not only like being an effective problem solver, but getting really good at identifying problems we're solving. And one of the things we want to constantly emphasize is that, we're preparing students to be impactful and valuable to whatever organization they go to. Because really, even at John Carroll, only a handful of my students in our minor are going to start their own business. A lot of the students I work with that are in the incubator, the businesses that they're starting right now are going to be temporary side hustles. In a few cases, it's going to be their livelihood, but the majority are going to do something else, right? So, one of our mottos, and I'll give credit to Don Winkle, who's my boss at John Carroll here, my program manager, is that our primary goal is helping students land their dream job. We want them to be so impactful wherever they go and provide value. And the entrepreneurial methodology and approach is how we feel we can get them there. So, I think stance is entrepreneurship. It's human development delivered through consequential projects. And the work matters because real people respond. And this is from a programming standpoint. One of those points I'm very adamant about is we can't just have students sitting in a classroom coming up with ideas that they think are really cool, right? Is the students we have to develop programmings where they are developing a real problem. And Karen did a great job talking about, kind of the basics of entrepreneurship is identify a problem, find out who has it, and understand how they're currently solving it. So we do a lot both through potential customer observation and interviewing, have students reach out to, talk to, observe as many people and businesses as they can that are relevant to their projects. And then we start to, as we tie into the scientific model of this, that's where we're going to start to see some real growth. And now we're seeing those kind of those interlinking curriculums. Okay. And I think, a great point to make is that, with this approach is it's going to align with what schools already promise, right? If we talk about career readiness, and whether we call them 21st century skills or soft skills, communication, critical thinking, and teamwork. Portrait of a graduate outcomes, whatever verbiage your district uses. I think almost in all of those, they're going to talk about leadership, adaptability, initiative, empathetic, lifelong learners. Those kind of statements are going to be in there throughout. And as we get into the kind of SEL component, that empathy, I think when we talk about empathy, not only as a valuable human skill for relating to others, But to develop effective solutions, products, services, we have to be empathetic. We have to understand not only the task or the problem that our potential clients are trying to solve, but the emotional connection that comes with it. And we, yeah, in our program, we talk about that right from the beginning. If I have students doing a bug list assignment, is find out, whether it's products or services, things that bug people, provide a estimate or gauge on the emotional component of that. Like if it's a frustration, is this like, oh, it kind of bothers me, but it's not a big deal, or this seems to really disturb some people. It's ruining people's day lives. And that tells us, is this a problem worth solving? Is this something that someone will actually pay money for? The higher the pain point, the more likely of a market that we're going to have success with. And we do that by, through empathy. And then, looking at self-awareness, responsible decisions. When it comes to customer interviews, to go along with this is I try, there's a place for putting together surveys that you can email to people to get broad responses, but I always make it a requirement that students have to talk to a certain number of people. What that number is, it can probably vary by age, timelines, how much time you have for your lessons and in between, but try to encourage your students, if you can, even if it's only talking to, five people, is encourage them to have real conversations and get it back and forth because it's much more valuable than just sending out polling. But in the real world, and my students who I work with in the incubator, we do both, right? Because we can get scale by sending things out and we can reach a lot more people. And then, we will, whether we intentionally target some people or based on the interviews we get back from digital survey, we can use that to identify people that we want to talk deeper with. And I think too is for schools, the shift to meaningful project-based learning and experiential learning. Entrepreneurship provides the best pathway that I could see. And to be fair, my background, I was a social studies teacher before I was an entrepreneurship teacher. So we were always trying to figure out good project-based learning, performance task construction, which were great. But entrepreneurship learning and having kids try to do things in real life blows that all out of the water. You go from running simulations with somewhat common constructs and parameters to now we're giving the kids a set of tools and turning them loose on things. So, some stats to help make your point to administrators. The workforce signal, there's no doubt about it, it's unambiguous, is when they interview, and this is just one instance, but you can research as much as you want. You can find tons of sources. Employers, by and large, realize that they value analytical thinking, right? The idea that, especially at the college level, now that we're facing, is that the skills we're building, not like soft skills, but any kind of technical skill, it's going to be less and less relevant because things are changing so fast, right? AI is accelerating that even more. And I think even without AI, what we see in the real world is any company, what they're doing, it's so advanced that there's no way, it's not possible to expect colleges to have students like properly prepared from a skill set perspective, right? They have enough skill to go be trainable in their area, but there's that's going to be a moving target anyway. So we need students that have that resilience to them, that have that problem solvability. And I think for students, being able to deal with ambiguity themselves is an essential skill that we need to teach with entrepreneurship. And I think the one thing, and this is something I always bring up with students and parents when I'm pitching them, and it's a great argument for administrators, is that these areas, the 21st century skills, that's where employers see the gap, right? When they do surveys, we don't see employers are finding students coming out of college, most colleges, and I'm lucky to be at John Carroll. We have fantastic programming. If we're talking about accounting, for example, our students have no problem going to one of the big four, and they'll pass their CPA after studying for it. The technical skill is fine, but where we see the gap is in these soft skills or 21st century skills, communication, right? It's super important to businesses, but yet we see this huge gap when we talk to employers and that college students, and in turn high school students. The kind of both, it's a pathway, is there's just a huge gap there. Same thing with critical thinking. And this is something I try to emphasize with my students is your value is really limited if you are just sitting at your desk waiting to be told what to do and how to do it, right? You could get a good job, you could do good work, but your path forward, your value, and your future outcomes and adaptability, you're putting your ceiling really low if you are um, insufficient in these areas. Okay. So, and this will be a little bit redundant to Karen, so I'm going to kind of go through a little bit quicker on some of these. But again, this I think it's important to emphasize is that when you look at your entrepreneurship curriculum and programming, that you are emphasizing the process of identifying problems in people, making connections, and developing real solutions, and then um, prototyping those, but rather like through minimum MVPs, minimum viable products is, the scientific method is we have to experiment. Like we test our assumptions, and if we're using business model canvases in conjunction with value proposition canvases, everything's an iterative approach, right? It's not kind of point A to point B, point D with, here are the steps. You realize is that, even that initial discovery process, sometimes in talking to potential customers, it raises new questions or new problems, and you kind of go back to the beginning, right? So I think emphasizing entrepreneurship as an iterative process in all aspects. Right? So in looking at these skills that are so important from a transferable standpoint is I hate that term soft skills, right? Soft gives this thing, soft sounds like it's not important, right? I still coach a lot and I work with athletes and I'm telling them all the time, hey, toughen up, don't be soft. So I kind of like soft is kind of a word I don't love. So I think we need to start thinking of these essential skills and universal skills that everybody's going to need to be successful. And I think without getting on the soapbox, it's a struggle. I think we've struggled both at the high school and college level is we have to change our outlook as much as we can or as our goals. Um, we can't worry so much about making kids good at school, right? Especially at the high school level. Is yes, I mean, yes, we have to prepare kids to succeed at the college level. Um, but being good at school isn't necessarily preparing you for the real world. And we can't wait till to college. In college we're guilty of that sometimes too, in different subjects of trying to make kids are so good at a content knowledge thing that's not as relevant to the real world, right? So I think it's starting. I think I love that Karen's doing this in the middle school, right? So starting at middle school, high school, and through college is we have to properly um, have our students understand the things that are going to work in the real world and from age appropriate and continue to develop is start building those skills as early as we can and make them more sophisticated as they get older. So, um, and I think this is, one area where I have some strong opinions about the role of pitch competitions in schools. But before students learn to pitch, they need to listen. And sometimes I'll get I can get a little adamant about like the role of pitch competitions. I think pitch competitions are fantastic, right? So I'm gonna start with that. I think where we've gone awry sometimes is programmings that put pitch competition as the final project, the most important thing, and emphasize too much the pitch itself, right? So what we do is we end up with an emphasis on delivery, speaking skills, presentation skills, which are all very important. And I think we should continue to develop those, but make sure your emphasis is on understanding, finding a real problem to solve and developing a solution to have that, to solve that problem and the process. And that the pitch will naturally be great after that, right? I would say like I'd rather see a student or a group of students have an outstanding, product solution, especially if they can get it to market. I'd rather see students who did a great job like that go up there and be super nervous on the stage because they have some public speaking anxieties and they're not great presenters, than having a student with a lesser idea who's a really, really good presenter, right? So I think it's kind of like um, again, it's not an either or thing. I know like pitch competitions are fantastic, but just make sure that we're not spending too much, especially if you have limited time with your students, that you're not spending an inordinate amount of time preparing for a pitch competition versus the hard work of identifying problems, developing solutions, achieving like real world examples, talking with customers. Put everything in its place, right? Is Don't, I tell my students all the time is we don't want you to be a solution in search of a problem, right? So you can develop a good idea and have a great pitch on it, but I want to, you need to tell me is, I ask my students all the time, is who cares, right? Not like who cares, who gives a, whatever, not sarcastically, but like, no, who's really going to care about this? Who's going to be impacted by this? How are you going to provide value for somebody? That's what we want to emphasize. Okay. And so that's, when we start from a programming standpoint, it's, the first time it's never build something or come up with a product idea. It's, I have bug lists, like develop, tell me about your frustrations. Find somebody. We do have them do customer observations, go to different businesses, see where people get frustrated, but look at people's experiences, understand the problem, and then, as empathetically as you can, um, care enough about that market to provide a good response, and a great solution for people. So we start to shift from not what I can build, but have the students start with who can I help, and hopefully, why do I want to help them? And then we start to see great ideas. And I will say, I think this approach is, and I will say, like, I will say, like, again, I'm not an anti-pitch competition. I have my students do them. I've had a lot of students have success with them, but the ones I've had who are most successful are the ones who take this approach to it. So, making sure that they can make a really good, really good connection to problem solution. So, and I think that, Karen kind of talked about all this. This will be, a little bit. Yeah, I think we talked about redundancy versus reinforcement. So, definitely want to reinforce those ideas. But we've, talked quite a bit about this already. And then I think where the other leap we can make, and this is I'd say this is easier for me at the college level than it was at the high school level, but I think that's a lot of high schools can do this well, and I think, if I had been in the high school level a little longer, I would have done a little bit more here. But the opportunity to create those experiential learning and project-based learning opportunities, like start moving things beyond the school walls, right? Obviously, working with college students who are adults over the age of 18, own transportation is a little bit different, but there's plenty of business owners, nonprofits, people in the community that will come into the school to talk and provide guidance. I think that's one thing that's fantastically, I don't know if it's unique, but I think it's unique how prevalent it is. Entrepreneurs tend to love to give back and be involved. It's one of the easiest asks in the world to ask a business owner if they want to talk to aspiring entrepreneurs at your high school or college. So I think the worst thing they can say is no, but I'd say the vast majority of the time it's yes. If you go out there and ask them, you're going to get a pretty good response, to do it. So when we talk about, I think building ecosystems is, you know, think about all the different components that you can do for your program that can add value, and think about how they intertwine. And not just like we want to have speakers, right? But having a list of good speakers isn't an ecosystem like that. That's one component of it. But look at how the school, the community, student, their families, local nonprofits, how all of those can work together. And I think, the nonprofit segment, it's a great experience for students. It's a good look for the schools. And it's one of the better ways I found for students to experience real problem solving, and make an impact. So there's lots of partnerships. I work with an organization called Food Strong Cleveland, which does there. If you're not familiar, it's a fantastic nonprofit in East Cleveland that is trying to address issues of, food deserts where we lack nutrition in inner cities, and then they've looking into like stronger neighborhoods and all kind of aspects. So we're actually going to be expanding that relationship where they're going to be more in the classroom more. But for the last 4 years, I've had students who are embedded, for at least a semester at a time, working, weekly to develop initiatives, and they do a good job of, not just the kids aren't starting out there digging in the dirt. They do some of that, but the nonprofits will give the students problems to solve and say, you run with it. So there's kind of these like ready-made real world projects that are available to students in that ecosystem. Okay. So, when as we develop these programs, we have to make sure that we have evidence that we can provide to our administrators. It's great to have, presentations, they look good, but I think having, prototypes, customer interviews, as best we can, document those things, reflections, student presentations, and when students present, um, think about the different audiences and ways that they're presenting, right? If they're doing a pitch competition, which again, I like pitch competitions, is that's a different audience than like presenting in front of school administrators, right? So school administrators are less concerned about the product and service. Yeah, yeah, they want to see cool things, but we want to show like presentation, evidence of learning, and learning towards those graduation outcomes that we talked about. So we want to make clear to administrators that we're achieving those things that we said we that deliver what we said we would deliver. Okay. So, one thing to look at is again, kind of this shift in the mindset is how we measure success is not how many students, start a business, but how many learn to create value for others, right? And again, it's not an either or. We want to emphasize, both things. But the business start is it's not the primary thing we need. Okay. Um, Excuse me one second. Sorry, working from home today. So, okay, so measuring growth, not just ventures. Um, the more we can document this and show administration, the better our case is going to be. Right. So, kind of emphasizing things we talked about on the last slide is show them the evidence, show them the work that students did, and then we start to tie these to, as Karen did with all those different state standards. And if you're not in Ohio, I think it's pretty easy to find state standards. If you have, like, I think every state has them in PDF. Take the things we talked about, t put it in a prompt to ChatGPT, upload your state standards, and let ChatGPT do the work for you. It'll kind of identify all of the crossovers that you need. So, three objectives. I think, and these are ones that I heard, and talking to other teachers over, especially at the high school level, over the course of the couple last few years, pretty common things we hear for objections for expanding entrepreneur program. I think the one we hit the most today was not every student wants to start a business. And I say 100%, right? Again, that's only one application of the skills that we're teaching the kids. They're going to be able to do a lot of other things. And depending on my relationship with the administrator and how much I want to get into it, I would argue, okay, well, how many students need trigonometry? Or some of our advanced like core classes. I'm a big history nerd. I love history. The reality is, I think I feel history is super important for perspective, but the amount of content we teach our kids in history, you can make the same argument as well. How valuable is that, right? So I think we need to think about, okay, yeah, I know it's outside of our core. This is an elective, but the skills here are the most essential skills that we need to teach students for their future. The other issues we run into is having enough time and especially not only time, resources, does it fit in with student scheduling and the other classes they need is I'd say there's a lot of different ways that we can deliver entrepreneurial programming, right? Sometimes we cram a lot of stuff into a single semester class. Other areas we can make that a year-long class. You can effectively deliver this programming as an after school or common period. If you have free time during the day or community blocks, you can deliver effective programming within those modalities as well. So there's a lot of different ways that we can achieve this. And if you are looking to start a program and you're running into that issue of having a full class, offer to start it as a club, demonstrate efficacy in that club, and then build it up from there. And then I think one of the roadblocks, and this I think that only not only for administrators but for teachers as well, because when I started teaching entrepreneurship at the high school level, the curriculum resources were not very, they were pretty scarce, and we still don't have the breadth of resources that we do in our traditional common subjects. Um, it's pretty easy right now. Like Northeast Ohio with YEI, right, supported by Burton D. Morgan with the Ville partnership. Us at John Carroll, we're always happy to help. Is there's so many community partners, and we say like the ecosystem, like community of the entrepreneurship community of educators. Um, there's access to tons of expertise, or even if you were a social studies teacher that was voluntold to teach entrepreneurship, you there's plenty of great resources there that align with these goals and kind of this philosophy that we talk about. So yeah, in the end is don't build entrepreneurship programs, right? Obviously we're doing that, but focus on building great people, right? We want to again get to those core student outcomes, the profiles of learners that we want self-directed, inquisitive learners. Right? Yeah, we want these kids to start to have the agency to go out there and want to solve problems and relate to people and develop effective solutions. So there's just some things there, and that's all of it. So,
Amazing. That was great. Thank you so much. I thought, I know, I'm like, wow, you between the two of you, I feel like you covered so many of my highlights and points, and I'm gonna touch on several of them. But again, not redundancy, just reinforcement. But really I'm going to show some of what YEI does have to offer, but really it is building on the foundation that Karen and Jamey just gave, because really what I wanted to really reinforce with everybody and present today was that it isn't extra and more and picking and choosing. It is meshing and complementing your already established curriculum, what your content area, what you're doing. Karen did a great job of outlining just, quick examples of how that touches every content area. Jamey really talked about how to talk to administrators and school-wide and why it can be so important to bring these elements in to any area, any age. Of course, starting younger is better, but building in and bringing it in at any age is phenomenal. We at YEI absolutely believe in everything that was just presented. That we are trying to create a body of students, of young kids that are developing these skills, and like Jamey said, more than developing the businesses. We promote that. We have, toolkits to help that and programs to help that, but that is not the ultimate or primary pillar and goal. We want to really develop the empathy, the problem identification, the developing of a solution. We have social entrepreneurship research embedded into our programming and what we do. And we also meet you there. We practice that model. I know Jamey put at one point it was listen, interpret, build, present, and iterate. And we practice that, right? We're listening to you. We are creating our new programming based around what we've heard, but we also listen to individuals and want to meet you where you are, find the right resources for you, develop the right support for you. And so whether we have it already created, whether our partners have it created and we connect you with that, whether there are workshops and PDs that we can direct you to, we hear you and meet you where you are. And that's really what this is about, is providing the best experience for your kids and what you are doing. And so I am going to run through, just in case you haven't gone to our website or checked out what we have to offer lately. We have several resources. Can you see? Hold on. Yeah, I'm just going to keep it like that. I'm not going to worry about how it comes. But so just some of our resources and support that we have to offer. Yeah. So some of our toolkits, and I'm going to go to our website in just a second to show you how this looks and how to find it. But some of our resources under toolkits are the complete pitch toolkit. And I will say, Jamey actually used several of our words or phrases. The toolkit has 5 lessons towards, pitch presentation, but it goes through lessons on problem identification and really identifying what is that problem. We have a pitch packet that helps kids identify, what's going on in their lives, their community's life, the people around them, how they can best help their community and what's going on. it also, works through to developing a solution for that and defining the unique value of that. And that involves the research and what else is going on, what other products or services exist. I like that Karen brought that research up. We also have dedicated lessons to social entrepreneurship, sports products, environmental and sustainable. And so those are also, if you want a more focused lesson, those are also in the pitch toolkit and also lead to and connect with different content areas, different lessons, different focuses that you might have in your programming, and branch off to, again, to more research and investigation. We also have the Teaching Young Entrepreneurs to Prepare for a Selling Experience. It guides kids through some of those components of financial literacy, understanding the value, creating a product or service to sell. And I'm going to talk in a minute about we have a specific market that we do for an actual selling experience. There's also a piece of that that helps prepare a selling experience for a school-wide or district-wide or community-wide experience. We have Entrepreneur. This talks about some of what actually both Jamey and Karen mentioned, like speakers and community involvement, community businesses. So this helps connect with the community. It helps bring in business, not just speakers. Like Jamey said, that's like, these are great one-off things, but also like making the real connections. So actually connecting with the businesses and solving problems that are actually in the community. We also have speakers, and that's a great resource, but actually making those connections. And this is a four mini book series to really develop that and get a more holistic approach. Coming soon, we have our Innovation Unbox series, ready to use lessons that spark creativity. Those are connected. Every single one of those 10 lessons has 10 units has 5 or 6 lessons. They are all specifically geared toward being turnkey, low cost, and all connected to STEM as well as entrepreneurship. And we are in the design process of that and the development process of some camp curricula, running social entrepreneurship camps, product to sell camps, and sport management camps. So these are always not just in the classroom, but also outside of the classroom. And that's what I was going to mention about like our May markets. We run YEI runs clubs, and we can help you design clubs or out of school opportunities. We have the camp curricula coming, but we run the university school clubs with a focus on developing those solutions to hit a target audience and what that means. And we do that kindergarten through 8th grade. So we have already been doing that, developing that, building those, and can help you also build that experience. I have partnership and programming, and I just put some examples of that on here. If you were with us in June, we talked with StoryPie. We've had Society of Child Entrepreneurs in Kansas on previously. We have the Biz Innovator Startup Program. If you are a high school teacher, that is a really great resource, and I can talk to you more about that. I know I'm kind of hurrying through things right now. That's on, we can connect you. It's one of many 0 Point products on Yippee, which I was going to talk about as well on our website. If you go to resources, you can find all those toolkits that I talked about here. And if you go to Yippee Exchange here, it is an entire online platform that can give you a lot of resources that we can help you help guide you through. So don't feel like you have to do this alone. I put the free 0 Point products here. There are many, many, many that are available to any and all of you. I will put more information about Yippee in the follow-up email, but we are here to help you through finding the right resources, whether they are on Yippee, whether they are our toolkits, whether we have highlighted them here on our Power Hour episodes and can guide you to the actual provider talking about their product and how to connect it to what you are doing. The guest speakers to connect there. We have games and contests. So there's lots of resources here. But again, we will help you through that. We will help find the right ones for you. We also do, as I mentioned before, we have workshops and PD that we can guide you to. I was saying the consultations and support, that's what I do. We are here to help you with and meet you where you are and whatever you need. I know I went last summer with Eileen here. We went to the workshop with Jamey and Doan, who he mentioned, and I know that that workshop is happening again next week. But there's lots going on and lots of things that we are plugged into and can help out with. And that's what we are here for. We're not just happy to help. That's what we want to do. We want to help build that network, help build that ecosystem, and help you find the way to talk to administrators, to talk to curriculum coordinators, to talk to your team and say, let's all try this, these lessons from this toolkit, or do build these skills with the kids. So share all of these resources. You will get the slides from Jamey, you'll get the slides from Karen, you will get the slides from me. Please contact me, email me, reach out, schedule an appointment so that we can really talk you through everything. Yeah, Jamey just put his email too. I know he's happy to help. Any guidance whatsoever that we can provide, we want to do that so that we are bringing these skills in into your any program and curricula that you do. So I know that was like a whirlwind there at the end, but I want to respect the time. But also, if you have questions, please feel free to stay and ask them. And otherwise, you will get an email with all kinds of resources and information and links and slides and everything else. So thank you so much for, oh, wait, we have announcements. I'm sorry. One more second, please stay one more second. So keep an eye out for our next Power Hour. Save the date for our fall conference, Inspire, October 16th and 17th here in Northeast Ohio. And the deadline for submissions for the Out of School Time National Pitch Conference that we are running is next Friday. So there will be information in the email about that. But please keep that in mind that the deadline is next week. And I will put a link to the survey here in the chat. We do want your feedback, but I will also put it in the follow-up email. So please make sure that you give us your feedback on today's session. So thank you all so much for being here. Really appreciate it all. And like I said, if you have questions, please stay. Otherwise, I will see you next month.